Welcome into another episode of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. I'm your host, Jake McDonnell. Want to wish everybody out there a very Merry Christmas. Again, Jake McDonnell. You can follow me on Twitter at jmcdonnell95, and our Twitter page is Charm City BW, and we are coming to crystal clear through either iTunes or SoundCloud. Be sure to check us out at charmcitybirdwatch.com. Again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. This episode is being recorded late on Christmas night, and going hard even during the holidays. And I have a very special guest here with me. First time appearing on the podcast. This is actually nice because I don't have to edit a phone call down or anything like that. I have him in the room with me, and we can just talk face to face, and it will be just kind of like normal. My brother, Joey McDonnell, joining me tonight for the very first time. And for those of you who don't know, my younger brother, Joe, is a sophomore at Shippensburg University, business student. He is in the Theta Xi fraternity there. So before we get started, why don't you just fill in our audience about just who you are and what you do?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. Those are Shippensburg, business major, Theta Xi fraternity. That's pretty much it. Not
this is also, I mean, it's worth noting, this is a sports podcast, and you have a history of sports. You were a tri-sport athlete, three-sport athlete in high school, and even, talk about your running career a little bit.
I ran cross country and track in high school. Cross country all 4 years of high school, track the last two. I went to states for cross country, went to districts for track. It's pretty much. I also swam for the last 2 years of high school, so those are my credentials, I guess.
And for those of you who don't know, and unless you are, stalk our family, I'm assuming you don't know, which I hope not. But anyway, we don't do a lot for Christmas. We kind of been sitting in our house all day, and some of you are probably thinking that I'm crazy for doing this on Christmas. But aside, we were in our house pretty much all day. We slept in until about 11, really, until we got our presents opened. And aside from a quick trip to attempted trip to Walmart, which we found out was closed, and we went out and tossed the football around for a little bit. But aside from doing that, we've been in the house all day. And then we watched, the Steelers dismantle the Texans tonight. And then the Eagles will be getting ready to kick off against the Raiders in about 45 minutes, an hour here. But what we want to do is just kind of break down the NFL playoffs, the way things are looking, 16 weeks with 1 week left in the regular season. Things are certainly heating up, particularly around here. The Ravens and the Steelers both won, and the Eagles are playing tonight. But with one more game left to play, and many people are picking the Eagles, but that's what a lot of people are expecting tonight. With only one game left to play, we're just going to break down the NFL playoff picture with 1 week left in the regular season. We're going to start in the AFC, but before we do that, I kind of plug my social media. Do you have any social media you want people, like your Twitter handle or anything people can find you?
At McDonald Joey is my Twitter handle for anyone who wants to follow me.
But anyway, let's get right into it. Talking about the AFC first, we're gonna go. I mean, both the Steelers and the Patriots both have first round byes coming up. We don't know exactly how the seeds are gonna fall between these two teams, but it looks like the Patriots are gonna finish as the number one, and the Steelers are the number two. The Patriots and the Steelers are both 12-3. The Patriots defeated the Bills 37-16 yesterday, clinching a first-round bye in the playoffs. They host the Jets, who are 5-10 next Sunday at 1. And they can clinch home field advantage simply with a win next week, or if they happen to lose, if the Steelers lost to the Browns, the Steelers or the Patriots could also clinch home field advantage, which is I'm pretty sure you're pretty confident there's no way that's going to happen. And then the Steelers, who are 12-3 as well, just dismantled the Texans 34-6, I think was the final score. Hosting Cleveland, who is 0-15 next Sunday at 1. A win would give the Steelers a first-round bye in the playoffs. They can still clinch home field advantage, like I said, with a win, and then a Patriots loss next week. So it's looking like right now that the Steelers are going to get the number 2 seed in the AFC this coming a week after the controversial call on Jesse James, and we had conversations with family going back and forth debating that. But I know it's kind of old news, but really it's kind of unfortunate that play kind of costed the Steelers home field advantage in the playoffs. And I know you have very strong viewpoints about the Steelers and the Patriots meeting again, possibly, if that would happen.
Well, I mean, last week was obviously didn't pan out how we thought it would.
I should note real quickly, for those who don't know, Joe is a Steelers fan.
I am a Steelers fan. A little biased there, but I don't know. My whole opinion of the catch was that it was a catch. However, I understand that with the current rules the way they are, it's up to interpretation. It's kind of person to person. But I think the Steelers heading into the postseason, especially with the Patriots in mind, are thinking a lot about or learned a lot about from that last game. I think their defense is more prepared for going into the playoffs with this Patriots team. I think we can kind of pick apart what we did right, what we did wrong, and really come in strong. But yeah, I think the Steelers heading into the postseason, especially with the Patriots in mind, are better aware of what can happen. I think that play with the Jesse James touchdown, not touchdown, I think that did decide the game. However, the Steelers, after the play with the whole short pass and then going for another play and not the field goal, I think that was a mistake. And I think Bill Belichick would have been more well prepared for that situation and obviously would have kicked the field goal. I can't say that play decided the game because we had a few chances after that play to get in the end zone or to kick a field goal, and we didn't do that. So I think the Steelers, all around as a coaching staff and as a team, learned a lot from that game, and in the postseason we'll be making adjustments based on that game. So I don't see it as a total loss, but obviously not having home field advantage in the playoffs, if it pans out the way that I think it will, could be not work toward the Steelers on the Steelers' behalf.
Do you think if the Steelers did make it to the AFC, like let's say the Patriots and Steelers play in the AFC Championship and the Steelers have to go to Foxborough, how do you like the Steelers' chances in playing in New England this time?
I think that they're worse than if they were playing in Pittsburgh.
You have some leverage there because they clearly played better than the Patriots did last week, and the Patriots have also dealt with a slew of injuries on the offensive side of the ball this season. They're not going to have Julian Edelman. You're never going to know if Rob Gronkowski is going to blow his knee out or something. Like he's been prone to injury in the past. And we've seen guys like Danny Amendola and Chris Hogan not get the job done this year, and the Patriots have struggled in recent weeks. And it's not just a foregone conclusion that the Patriots are going to beat the Jets next week. Like we assume that that's going to happen, but the Patriots always play down to their AFC opponents or AFC East opponents. I definitely think that the Jets are the weakest team out of the three of their division rivals, but that is not like the Patriots and the Jets game is not nearly as much a give me game as the Steelers and Browns is next week. Like I cannot see any circumstance where Cleveland beats Pittsburgh next week. I can't, and they're still technically playing for something as well.
Right. Well,
so
I think Cleveland at this point is they have to kind of decide, where their team is heading in the next couple of years, and I think they're at a crossroads. So I don't see them beating the Steelers, but the Steelers are also, they do play down to their opponents. If Cleveland took them out on top, what was the score when they played Cleveland earlier in the season?
They won 21-18 week 1.
I mean, it was only a 3-point. When you think about it, it was only a 3-point game earlier in the season.
That was week 1 though. This is week 16.
Right, and given how the Steelers played today, I don't see that there should be any reason that they lose against the Browns. But
at home too in Pittsburgh.
Right, and but yeah, I think the Jets Patriots game is definitely more of a up in the air versus Steelers Browns, but you never know. The Steelers, they've had their times where they've played down to their opponents, and I think that's something to look out for next week. But I definitely think that the Patriots Jets game hopefully will be more competitive than the Steelers Browns game.
Now let's say there's a number of ways that the playoffs could shake out, but let's say the AFC Championship game, you either have the option of traveling to Foxborough and getting revenge on the Patriots, or you have the option of playing the Ravens, a division rival, in Pittsburgh. What scenario would you rather have?
Personally, I'd like to march into Roxborough and show the Patriots, who's boss. I think that last game ended on a bad note, and I think it would be really bitter. Well, it would be very, very nice to see the Steelers march into Patriot territory and tear them apart. However, that's much easier said than done, and that's up to Ben, that's up to Brown. If Antonio Brown is playing, there's a lot of factors that go into that game, and it's easier. It'll be easier to predict it the week before than the week now because we don't know who will be playing. We don't know,
Well, the thing that's interesting to me is we're going to talk about the Jaguars in a minute, but there's a strong chance the Steelers could end up playing the Jaguars if the Jaguars were to win their wild card round, and that's a scary one because you got to think. I know they're expecting Brown back at some point in the playoffs. I don't know if it's a guaranteed lock that he'd be back by the divisional round, and that's when they would be playing Jacksonville, or they have a good chance to be playing Jacksonville. And if you don't have Antonio Brown against their defense, which is setting historic marks this season, and they forced Ben into 5 interceptions when Brown was playing. If there is a team that I don't care if it's the Steelers or anybody wants to face in the playoffs, it might be the Jaguars.
I'd say there's 2 secrets to winning that game, and that's preparing Ben. That's getting him to be more situationally aware in the pocket, making smarter throws. He is not known for making the smartest throws, but I think a little bit of coaching. I think going into that game, if he's more prepared to face that defense, I think that can go a long way. I also think with the Jaguars defense being the way it is, points early in the game are going to be really important. It's all going to come down to Ben's awareness in the pocket and picking apart Blake Bortles on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, it comes down to what you think about Blake Bortles, but when it comes down to it, a lot of teams are very aware of Blake Bortles' inability, and they play to that. So the Steelers' keys to winning that game are going to be Ben being more aware in the pocket, making smarter throws, and picking apart Blake Bortles on the defense.
And speaking of the Jaguars, they are 10-5. They lost 44-33 to the 49ers on Sunday, who are undefeated since Jimmy Garoppolo took over. That's certainly an exciting rivalry or exciting quarterback to look at in the future. Bortles threw 3 interceptions in that game. Now, the Jaguars clinched the AFC South when the Titans lost to the Rams on Sunday. So before they even kicked off, they still won the division. I have in my notes here, I wrote that they could clinch a bye next week, but that's wrong because they're now 2 games behind both the Steelers and the Patriots. They have no opportunity to win or to get a bye, so they will definitely be the number 3 seed in the playoffs since they clinched the AFC South. So again, they play on the road next Sunday at 1 o'clock against the Titans, which if their playoff seeding is already locked up, they might not even play their starters at all. But still, the Chiefs technically are only one game behind them, so there could be tiebreaker scenarios there. So there's still technically something for the Jaguars. As we know right now, again, the NFL will release their final playoff scenario rulings within the next couple hours after the Eagles and Oakland game. But for the time being, it looks very likely that the Jaguars will finish as the number 3 seed. And just a quick tidbit here, Bortles in wins 16 touchdowns with 3 interceptions, and in losses he has 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So the key is to get him all rattled, and it doesn't spell well for the Jaguars. The Chiefs are right now the number 4 seed at 9-6. They will be, or I have here, they will be the number 4 seed regardless of what happens next Sunday. There's a lot of different playoff scenarios going on. Very hard to keep track of if you're not reading it on a web page right in front of you. But they beat the Dolphins 29-13 on Sunday. They play at Denver next Sunday at 4:20 or 4:25. So it looks like right now the Jaguars and the Chiefs are going to be the 2 teams in the AFC to host a playoff game in the wild card round. And something that's I know it's like this for the AFC. I don't know if it's the same way for the NFC, but the way that it is, we're going to get into the wild card teams now for the AFC. All the Ravens, the Titans, the Chargers, and the Bills, all 4 teams vying for that playoff spot or 2 wild card spots. They're all playing in the 4:25 time frame next weekend, all at the same time. And again, the Ravens were supposed to play at 1 o'clock against the Bengals. That game got moved, so the Ravens will have plenty of scoreboard watching to do, unlike how they had to do on Saturday when they beat the Colts 23-16. Now the Ravens are 9-6 because the Titans and the Bills both lost on Sunday and the Ravens won. They moved up to the number 5 seed in the AFC, and they will stay there as if they simply win and beat the Bengals, who are 5-10 next Sunday. The game against Cincinnati is in Baltimore, like I said. If the Ravens lose, they can still get in the playoffs if the Titans lose to the Jaguars or the Bills lose to the Dolphins. They will be the number 5 seed if they beat the Bengals Or if they lose, if the Titans and Bills lose as well, the Ravens will stay the number 5 seed. They will get the number 6 seed if they lose and either the Bills or Titans lose. So if they lose, they're also counting on some other teams to lose as well. So I'd assume if they lost, if the Ravens lost and then the Titans or Bills both win, then they're out of the playoffs. So they need to win. They're going to be playing at the same time as the Titans and the Bills. That's all it comes down to. And then still alive in the wild card hunt is the Chargers and the Bills, both at 8-7. The Bills to get in, they need to win at Miami next week, and they also need the Chargers and the Titans to both lose. They could also get in with a win over Miami and a Ravens loss. And then the Chargers, they need to beat the Raiders to get in, and then along with that, they also need the Titans to lose to the Jags and the Ravens to beat the Bengals. So the Chargers need to have the most help to win or to get into the playoffs, but it's looking right now, it's looking like the Ravens will. As long as they win, the Ravens, they have the best chance to get into the playoffs. And then beyond that, it's looking like it could either be the Titans, the Bills, or the Chargers. A lot of those teams are inconsistent. The Titans have lost 3 straight. So it's looking like the Ravens are probably going to grab the 5 seed, and then one of those teams is going to grab the 6 seed. So if you had to guess right now, let's just say the Ravens get the number 5 seed. And then you have the Titans and the Chargers and the Bills, who are all at 8-7. The Titans they host the Jaguars next week. The Chargers host the Raiders, and the Bills have to go to Miami, which I think is clearly the toughest one. I'd say I don't know for sure if Jacksonville has any. It sounds like they are not going to technically have anything to play for, so I don't know if Jacksonville is going to rest their starters or not. But at the same time, I think it would be wise to get Bortles as many reps as it could, as many as you can, along with the fact that the Jaguars haven't appeared in the playoffs in 10 seasons. So I think it might be a good idea to keep everybody fresh. So if I had to pick, honestly, the Titans probably have the best bet to get in, but I could easily see the Chargers or Bills getting in. There's a lot that could happen, but looking very likely right now if the Ravens are going to get in.
Right, I can see either of those 3 teams. The Bills with Shady, the Chargers with Phillip Rivers. I think it's you can't exactly count them out. They're all 8-7. It's a close race there. But yeah, I can see either of those teams or any of those teams making it. I think the more important spot is what happens with the Ravens, at least in our division. And with that, I mean, what do you think? What do you think playoff wise? The Ravens would be able to accomplish this year. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of different possibilities. I know that the Ravens haven't had a very potent offense all year. They are finally starting to come along now. Their defense has carried them a long way away. But with that being said, when the Ravens get in the playoffs and when Joe gets in the playoffs at January, Joe Flacco, that being, anything's possible. And it's like we've said before, and the Ravens are very healthy at this point of the season, thankfully, and Flacco is playing better. It's looking right now, it's likely that the Ravens are very likely to play the number 4 seed in the Chiefs, but if for whatever reason they got the 6 seed, that means they go to Jacksonville. And between those 2 teams, it's kind of a mixed bag as to who I would rather face. The Chiefs, I think the Ravens could easily, get out of the wild card round if they make the playoffs and get to the divisional round against either the Steelers or the Patriots. But there's pros and cons of facing both the Jaguars and the Chiefs. With the Chiefs, you have definitely a weaker team, not as good of a defense as Jacksonville, a average quarterback in Alex Smith, that despite the hard place to play, as we all know Arrowhead Stadium is, I think it'd be a much easier opponent compared to Jacksonville, who defeated the Ravens 44-7 in Week 3. Given that game was in London, it was the Ravens' first time going over there, but at the same time, they really struggled against Blake Bortles. Make fun of him all you want, but he ripped them apart in that game. Then you also factor along in how good the Jaguars' defense is. And yes, even though the Ravens' offense has been playing better, the Jaguars' defense has been a turnover machine. But with that being said, if the game was in Jacksonville as compared to Kansas City, there would definitely be a lot more Ravens fans showing up if it was played in Jacksonville. I would rather, it's a tough call. I'd kind of rather face the Chiefs because I think the Ravens have a better chance of beating them than I think they do with the Jaguars. But still, we had to talk some Ravens here because they're in a very interesting situation. They need to, and I'm kind of scared about the Ravens game next Sunday, and there's a couple reasons why. Because there's a lot of pressure on the franchise to get back in the playoffs after 3 seasons. And then the Bengals are going to be playing for pride. They're a division rival. They're going to be wanting to play spoiler. They're going to be pissed off from getting shut out 20-0 in week 1. And then also that's Marvin Lewis's last game as head coach, and they're going to want to play hard for him. So very interesting. Again, probably one of the biggest Ravens games we've had in a couple years here in Baltimore, and now it'll be interesting to see next weekend what kind of attendance figures they draw. So moving on now into the NFC playoff picture. Again, on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast, I'm Jake McDonnell, joined by my brother Joey McDonnell on Christmas night. Yes, we are the crazy brothers sitting in on a Christmas night doing a podcast. I don't think there are many other people in the world saying that they're doing that, but we are doing it. How's that feel?
Really learned I was going to be doing this morning, and couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I mean, we figured we wouldn't be doing a whole lot today, and might as well get another episode out tonight.
Might as well talk some sports.
Exactly, and there was football on today, so there's excuses, I think.
Right.
But moving along out into the NFC, the Eagles, who are getting ready to kick off against the Raiders in a couple minutes here. Again, if you're listening to this after the fact, just keep in mind that this is being recorded before the Raiders and Eagles game kicks off. Right now, the Eagles are 12-2. Defeating the Raiders tonight would give them home field advantage in the playoffs. They already clinched a bye. If they lose tonight to Oakland, which I don't think is very likely, they will either need to win against Dallas next week, or if they did lose to Dallas next week, they would either need the Vikings to lose to the Bears to clinch home field advantage. And I know, being both of us, I mean, I did the Eagles podcast about a week or so ago with everybody that I go to school with that supports the Eagles. So what do you think about, now that they're not going to have Carson Wentz, how far do you think Nick Foles can realistically take the Eagles in the playoffs? And granted, after the game tonight, a lot of people could have a different opinion, but after seeing him for one game, what do you think about Nick Foles?
Well, but if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago what I thought about the Eagles' playoff contentions, I would say that I think they're a Super Bowl team. I think they had an incredibly strong offense, a crazy good defense, and I think that going into this week, not a whole lot of that has changed. They have lost their MVP quarterback, Carson Wentz, and I think that is a huge blow. I think his contribution to the team is not to be understated. However, I think if you asked me today how far they would make it, I think they'd make it late into the playoffs. Nick Foles being, we've only seen him for one game. At this point in time, we haven't seen the Eagles game tonight, and I think only seeing him for one game against the
Giants.
What are they?
2-13 now.
2-13. They won by a rather small margin, and I think seeing him play in that game, it's not very revealing of what kind of quarterback he's going to be and how detrimental to the team he's going to be. Seeing him play a higher tier team, it's really good, is what's going to be most revealing. And I think we haven't seen that. It's really hard to judge right now. If he performs well under pressure and well against better defenses, I think we can start to count him in and say, well, maybe there's some later playoff contentions. Maybe there's even a Super Bowl appearance coming up. But I think at this point it's very unsure on where they lie, and I wouldn't put too much on them right now until we see how Nick Foles does against better teams.
Well, the good news for the Eagles is, unlike a team like the Packers or a team like the Seahawks, they have a lot on offense to work with Nick Foles. Right. So that's a good thing the Eagles have going for them. Beyond that, the Vikings, who are 12-3, they shut out Green Bay 16-0 on Saturday night. They did not clinch a bye because the Panthers, the 11-4 Panthers, beat the Buccaneers. However, the Vikings can clinch a bye simply by beating the Bears next weekend, or if they happen to lose, if the Panthers also lost to the Falcons, who are 9-6, they would also clinch a bye in that regard. We'll talk about the likely division, or either the likely or the division winners, and then go into because the only division left to be decided is the NFC South. So we'll break down the top 4 seeds as of now, and then go into the wild cards. Actually, let's just talk about the Vikings and Rams, and then go into the 3 that are in the NFC South. But Beyond the Vikings, the Rams are one game behind them at 11-4. They defeated the Titans 27-23, clinching the NFC West for the first time in 14 years. They will host the red-hot 49ers on Sunday, which could turn into a very interesting game. They could clinch the number 3 seed simply by beating the 49ers. However, if the Saints lose, if the Saints and the Rams both happen to lose, the Rams own the tiebreaker over the Saints from when they beat them earlier in the season. So between the Eagles, the Vikings, and the Rams, those are clearly the top 3 teams in the NFC. Which one has the best chance to make it to the Super Bowl, do you think?
Well, in my mind, for the past couple weeks, the NFC I'm seeing, I've been thinking the Super Bowl contenders would be the Vikings and the Rams, and on the AFC side, I'd say it would be the Steelers and the Patriots. If I had to guess right now, I would say we could see a Steelers-Vikings Super Bowl. There's obviously the Patriots are never to be counted out, and especially in the playoffs, especially with Tom Brady's last appearance in the Super Bowl. You really can never count them out. So I never do. But I think this year, if I had to put a bet on it right now, I'd say hopefully there would be a Steelers-Vikings Super Bowl. I don't know. I think the Vikings are just all around the strongest team in the NFC from what I've seen.
And that's been amazing, too, because they've overcome losing Dalvin Cook early in the season, and then they lost Sam Bradford. And I'll give it, Case Keenum's played extremely well. But at the same time, it's going to be, very interesting to see. We look at the top 4 seeds in the NFC, and Drew Brees is really the only veteran there. You have Nick Foles, but in terms of experience, Drew Brees is really the only one that has a significant amount of experience in the playoffs. Again, you're talking about Jared Goff and Case Keenum here, and really before this season, Keenum wasn't even a regular starting quarterback. So seeing how he performs over the final stretch here is going to be really interesting to see, as well as Nick Foles and as well as Jared Goff.
Right, and I think a sleeper is definitely the Saints. Drew Brees always impresses me whenever I watch him play. I always see him making big plays. I always see him throwing down the field, making really gutsy plays, and I respect that, and I always think that the Saints are never to be counted out. I just don't think they have the strongest overall team. I think even though they have Drew Brees at quarterback, and even though he makes great plays all the time, and they have Ted Ginn Jr. and I just don't think they're the strongest team. I think the Vikings overall are the strongest team, and could prove me wrong. And it's always interesting to be proven wrong. But I think right now the Rams, at least the Vikings. I think the Rams Saints matchup would be a little bit more competitive. But no, I definitely think the Saints definitely have their voice in there. But it'll all be up to Drew Brees and that offense to try and pull everything together at the end postseason, and we'll see what they do.
Now, there's one more division left to be decided in the NFC, and really 3 teams are vying in that division for a playoff spot. The Saints right now are winning the division at 11-4. The Panthers are also 11-4, and they have the number 5 seed, but right now the Saints have the number 4 seed. They clinched a playoff berth with their 23-13 win over Atlanta on Sunday, but they did not clinch the NFC South because the Panthers defeated the Buccaneers. So if the Saints simply beat the Buccaneers next weekend, they will clinch the NFC South. The Panthers clinched a playoff spot. They will make it to the postseason again, beating the Buccaneers 22-19 on Sunday. They can win the South, next Sunday if they defeat Atlanta next Sunday, and then New Orleans loses to Tampa Bay as well. Then also there is a possible scenario in which the Panthers could clinch a bye, but a lot would have to happen in order for that to happen, because they do own some head-to-head matchups against some higher seeds in the NFC. And then the Falcons, the Falcons and the Seahawks are both vying for that number 6 spot right now, both 9-6. The Falcons can get in the playoffs with a win over the Panthers next Sunday, which looks pretty unlikely at this point. If they lose, they can still get in the playoffs if Seattle loses to the Cardinals, which the Cardinals are only 7-8. The Seahawks are 9-6, and I don't really think the Seahawks are that good. So I could see the Cardinals defeating them, but I'd probably still end up picking the Seahawks. And between the Falcons and Seahawks right now, if you asked me, honestly, the Falcons, it all comes down to strength of opponent right now. And I think it's very likely the Seahawks grab that 6th spot, because the Seahawks are playing the Cardinals next week. And that game is in Seattle. Whereas the Falcons they're hosting the Panthers, but the Panthers are obviously a much stronger team than the Cardinals. But if you remember 2 years ago when the Panthers won or made it to the Super Bowl, they were 15-1 in the regular season, and their only loss was in Atlanta, so they don't particularly play well there. So yeah, with that being said, with Seattle facing Arizona and then the Falcons facing Carolina next weekend, who do you think is going to get that last spot in the NFC? I'm picking the Seahawks.
Yeah, I can see the Seahawks getting it. But I think the Seahawks defense is pretty beat up at this point to consider them, I think the Falcons. I think the Matt Ryan Julio Jones matchup is never to be underlooked. I think that they can do some things on the offensive side of the football that can be quintessential in winning a football game. But the Seahawks, I think I would pick them over any.
I think it's more likely that Russell Wilson beats the Cardinals than Matt Ryan beating Cam Newton. Like, at this point, right. I just think it's more likely that Russell Wilson's going to be able to get the job done there.
I mean, Russell Wilson is being the one-man army at this point. The
Falcons had a really deflating loss to the Saints this past weekend, and that's going to be the Seahawks walked into Dallas and beat the Cowboys and knocked them out of the postseason. So I think they're definitely going to be riding the momentum wave.
I think a lot of it rides on how Russell Wilson plays. I mean, he
has to do everything.
He has done everything at this point. I can see his team. You see him always all the time running down the field, making big plays. I think he can't do it all himself. But I do think that his matchup against the Cardinals is an easier matchup than Falcons versus Panthers. But at that point, it really doesn't matter in the postseason. I think the Falcons might have the best chance in the postseason over the Seahawks, just because I think the Seahawks offense and defense are both pretty beat up at this point, and I think the Falcons still have some big threats. Like I said, the Matt Ryan Julio Jones matchup is obviously never to be understated.
Well, what's interesting here is if the Seahawks do get that number 6 seed, that would likely mean that they would go to LA to face a Rams team that just blew them out last week in Seattle. So that would they would be out for blood if they went into that game. But they typically don't play the Rams that well.
Right.
So if you're going to ask me who's going to give the Rams a better fight, I think it's the Falcons, but I think the Seahawks are probably going to end up getting in.
Yeah, I mean, and that's. See, the thing about football is obviously you can't account for how people play on a specific day. But if you gave me the stat sheets of both the Seahawks and the Falcons at this point, I would say Seahawks beat the Cardinals, Seahawks lose against the Rams, Falcons have a better shot at the Rams, but their shot at Cam Newton and the Panthers is less intriguing to me than the Seahawks Cardinals game. I think Seahawks pull win over the Cardinals. Falcons Panthers is up in the air, and then after that's it's going to be down to playoffs.
And keep in mind, a lot of the important games that are determining wild card teams are going to be played later. All the games taking place on Sunday next weekend, but it looks like a lot of the wild card crucial games and the crucial seeding games, the majority of them will be taking place later in the day in the 4:00 time frame. Since this will be happening on New Year's Eve, there will be no primetime game, just the 1:00 and 4:00 time window. So that was a lot. I know there's only 1 week left in the regular season, and there's a lot of different playoff scenarios that could take place when you're talking about it. It's hard to keep track in your head of everything going on, but I think this was good, and I'm glad you joined me tonight on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. It was good to get you on.
I'm happy to be a part of this.
Absolutely. So for my brother, Joey McDonnell, again, a sophomore at Shippensburg University, a business major and a member of the Theta Psi chapter at Shippensburg. For him, I'm your host, Jake McDonnell. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at jmcdonnell95. And our official Twitter handle for Charm City Birdwatch is CharmCityBW. Be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or SoundCloud and check out all of our work at CharmCityBirdwatch.com. Happy holidays, and hope everybody had a nice Christmas. We will be talking to you again all throughout the week on the Charm City Birdwatch Podcast Network.